Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining to this week's VooPlayer Q&A weekly webinar call. We will get started here in just a moment, but before we do, if you would be so kind as to confirm that you can both hear my voice as well as see my screen, which should say VooPlayer Q&A on it. Just if you can, just confirm that in the chat box, then we can get started. Thank you. All right, it sounds like we're getting some confirmations that both audio and video are good, so we can get started. This is the VooPlayers Q&A weekly webinar call. My name is Peter, and I am VooPlayers product manager. We are holding these calls in order to answer any questions which you as users may have, also to provide any training on any advanced features, also cover different use cases which you may have, also to showcase new stuff that we've been working on, and finally and ultimately to gather feedback on everything within VooPlayer and how we can improve it to provide you with even more value. With that in mind, the webinar format is pretty straightforward. So at any time that you have a question, hopefully you came prepared with some questions that you would like to discuss, you can just drop them in the chat box at any time and we can just start answering them in the order that they come in. Worth mentioning is that the webinar replays are available both on the YouTube channel as well as on our Facebook group, which if you are not a member of, it'll be great to join it. So just look up VooPlayer group on Facebook. A lot of interesting discussion always happening there. So webinar replays are available the day after the call. And also, if you are unable to attend any of the webinars, but you would like a particular feature discussed, you can just post your question either in the Facebook group or just email us at support@vooplayer.com and we'll just answer it in the upcoming webinar. With that in mind, Graham is saying, pardon my ignorance, but is VooPlayer a Flash player? And if it's not, what are the advantages or disadvantages of this? We'll get to your question in a second here, Graham. Last couple of weeks, we've had a couple of major announcements. So I'll touch base on both of them, just so everybody's caught up, and then after that we can start answering questions. No major announcements this week. I believe 2 major announcements in the last 2 weeks was a lot of work, so we're kind of gathering feedback on both of them currently. So the first announcement, which I said was rolling out to a lot of people, and I believe at this point most everybody within the application should have this available, is the beta performance optimizations. So throughout the last few months, we've been working on optimizing the performance, primarily impacting the page load speeds of VooPlayer, as well as data processing speeds, as well as video streaming speeds. So we're encompassing all of that in the beta performance optimizations effort. And what we're really looking forward to is gathering more and more feedback on this before rolling it out of beta as a by default player. So if you turn this option on, that will adapt your embed code as required to feature the beta performance optimization improvements which were made. And as I mentioned the previous time, what we've done in detail is explained in the article for it. So what I'll do is just once more, I'll add this to the chat so you guys can review it and test it out. And there's a neat video with sort of comparisons of before and after, as well as some of the technical details which went into this. So it's a great effort which we've made. It's a great feat, and we're kind of pleased with what we made. So what we really need at this point is
getting more feedback on if you're feeling a really positive impact on load page times, and also if you're running into some conflicts. One of the feedback points was some conflicts with a particular WooPlayer page builder, and we're able to resolve that. But overall, we're receiving rather positive feedback on everything on that was accomplished. So that's the first thing that I wanted to touch base on. As I mentioned, this should be available in the application to everybody at this time. Also, an announcement from a couple of weeks ago, just touching base on it again. We've also put a great deal of effort into adding a significant layer of interactivity to WooPlayer and making it a lot easier to offer interactive content as well as annotations within it. So we've completely reworked the overlays and the annotations module of WooPlayer so that you are with just a few clicks able to create some pretty nifty looking overlays, which you can style, position, adapt, colorize, animate. So let's have it bounce in, and you can just really go crazy with 14 new templates which we've provided, covering everything from simple chat annotations to full coupon opt-in interactive layers on top of your videos. So I don't think there's much need to go into a lot of details with regards to this. Just wanted to make sure that everybody, I see some new people joining to the webinar, so just wanted to make sure that everybody is aware of this. So also I'm just share a link for that as well. So that's overlays 2.0 as we are referring to them internally. So here's the announcement for that as well on everything that was done there. All right, that's just a couple of things that I wanted to touch base on, and also just with regards to the roadmap, I mentioned last time we are heavily focusing on improvements of WooPlayer's behavior on mobile devices and improving the playback as well as sort of response time and interactivity between some features such as floating on mobile devices, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of work to be done there, especially with iOS devices, and that's kind of our primary focus for the month of June as we continue improving everything. And as always, we're continually integrating your feedback and improving based upon that. All right, cool. So that's in a nutshell with regards to some of the things I wanted to touch on. So let's get to some questions. So Graham said, pardon my ignorance, but is WooPlayer a Flash player? And if it is or is not, what are the advantages and disadvantages of this? I don't think at this point in time there is much point to discussing what are the advantages of, or rather what are the disadvantages of a Flash player. Flash is simply not supported basically anywhere anymore by default unless users explicitly allow it to run, and even that mostly on desktop devices. So from what I have researched throughout the past couple of years since Flash started being banned from everywhere due to a lack of security, the probably desktop and laptop environments are the only places where you can enable Flash currently. So WooPlayer is not a Flash player. WooPlayer is a purely HTML5 player. So just sort of simulate this. Well, I can just do it with this video, I guess. So what WooPlayer does is it just, let me just come back to my videos because I canceled out of that. So what WooPlayer does is it offers you with an embed code, an HTML embed code, which just serves an iframe to your player, which is an HTML5 video, which has an added layer of WooPlayer magic on top of it, enabling you to interact with it. So it's a pure HTML player, which is supported across any device or any environment without explicit user permission for it to run, and that's the major advantage of that. Additionally, a huge advantage of it is the ability it gives us to manipulate the player and interact with the player both via the API, the front-end API, as well as via the application controls. So the data is much lighter. The format is much better for video streaming. The encoding of the video source is I think the most secure there is online, even in comparison to all of our competitors. So all of those are huge advantages of HTML over Flash. So I'm not aware that anybody at this time is currently using Flash as their primary solution if they haven't migrated it at this time. So I would not be able to discuss any advantages of a Flash video player, or at least none that I'm aware of. If you care to clarify your question a little bit, Graham, with regards to why you are asking it, I might be able to go into a bit more details. But I think just talking about why Flash is bad, I could spend hours on that. All right, so let's move on. Phoebe is asking, chapter markers are now showing names as you put cursor on it. Thanks for the effort. Yeah, that was a small bug which I pointed out. Was affecting only the preview but not the publish. And I think one of the videos which I just opened had a chapter marker. I think it was this one, test conversion, was it? Yeah, so the chapter markers have returned. And as I mentioned previously, we are perhaps not in the next couple of releases, but we do have a scheduled effort on reworking the chapter markers to make them a little bit more interactive and add with the added ability to add more content to them, both images and HTML and sort of linking stuff externally from the chapters. So I think I put it up on the idea board. Submit and vote on ideas. Let me just double check on that. Under consideration, what do we have? Rework video markers as video chapters. So the thumbnail kind of gives an indication of something that we want to accomplish. This is the Netflix video player. So something along those lines of chapters, which we would be able to showcase in some sort of an interactive menu where each timestamp or rather a marker would show the content which you additionally provide. So the more votes we get on this, the more likely we are to prioritize it. So if you continue to see additional value in this, vote multiple times. So yeah, a lot of potential in this. It's just that we have some more valuable stuff that we feel we need to prioritize on, such as mobile playback. Graham is saying, thanks for the answer. A little while ago, I looked at purchasing a Vimeo account, but they made a big deal about transaction, I read that right, about transaction expenses and video hosting fees depending on where I am based. Is this baloney? And if not, is this true with WooPlayer? So one great thing about WooPlayer that really kind of sets us apart from competition such as Vimeo or Wistia or YouTube is that we kind of give our users liberty of choosing their own hosting. Not only that, but also the ability for cross hosting, what is how we are referring to it. So I'll get to that in a second, but to answer your question, is it baloney or not? It's definitely not baloney. So serving your video content can be done in one or two ways. The first way, which I'll refer to as regular bandwidth, is basically you have a file on a server somewhere. So let me just I don't know, I'll grab Google Maps just to illustrate this point. So for example, you could be in, let's say, Spain. So let me just add a little pinpoint here. So let's say you're over here in Spain, and let's say that that pinpoint will not stay for some reason. So let's just do it like this. Oh, I have some of the places I starred that I visited. So let's say you're in Paris, right? So let's say you're in Paris, and our data server is it is actually in New York. So one way, which is regular bandwidth, would be for you to stream directly from that server, which is in New York. And that is acceptable, I believe, for maybe non-extremely professional uses of video. And something that we are offering is what is called regular bandwidth. And we don't charge at it any additional costs for it. And it's completely unlimited, meaning that anybody can watch your videos infinite amount of times, and we're not going to charge you an extra cent for that, basically. So that's one thing that I don't think anybody else is offering from our competitors, is that you can stream directly from the originating server where the files are, and that's not going to cost you a cent. However, I mentioned that the reason why this is not optimal is that because in professional use cases, every millisecond counts with regards to how fast your video is loading. So what VooPlayer is doing and what Vimeo is doing, but for example, Vimeo is doing this exclusively and Vistia is doing this exclusively, is that they are charging you for CDN bandwidth. And what CDN is, it's a cloud delivery network, or rather content delivery network over the cloud. And what that means is that the files from the New York server are going to be copied over to the London server, to the Frankfurt server, to the Munich server, to the Warsaw server, to the Madrid server. So the copies of that file are going to exist in X number of locations across the world. So when somebody tries to access it from Paris, it's just going to identify the closest location, for example, in London, and it's just going to stream from that London server, meaning the content is going to be somewhat faster. So again, taking into account viewers' internet speeds and bandwidth restrictions and blah, 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 et cetera, but in general, it's performing significantly better if it's streaming from London rather than from New York. VooPlayer also offers the CDN connection. So let me just get a link for that as well. And all of this is rather neatly explained in regular versus turbo bandwidth. I misspelled all sorts of things in there. So regular versus turbo bandwidth, and that kind of explains that in detail. So you can use that as a reference point for understanding how each one performs and what each one does. And I think that article even has a couple of examples of videos so you can see how they are behaving when regular bandwidth is used and when turbo bandwidth is used. So please look into that article a little bit more. And the reason why competitors are charging more, and why we are actually charging additional pricing for the bandwidth, and 200 gigabytes of bandwidth are included within the license. But if you're using terabytes upon terabytes, we need to charge more for that because we have recurring costs on our end to maintain that infrastructure. So that's kind of the main difference for bandwidth. And as I mentioned, what's really great about VooPlayer, aside from giving you the ability for unlimited regular bandwidth, so that's the first huge advantage, I believe. And the second one is hybrid hosting. And what hybrid hosting is, it basically allows you to put your file wherever you want if you don't want to host it on VooPlayer and be limited by those storage and bandwidth restrictions. So what you could do, for example, Graham, is you could just upload your file on YouTube. So you can come to YouTube and say, hey, I just want to use YouTube's storage, and so let me just grab some video, YouTube storage and bandwidth. And you can do this with YouTube, you can do this with Vimeo, you can do this with Dropbox, you can use this with Google Drive, you can use this with Amazon S3, you can do this with Microsoft's OneDrive, et cetera, et cetera. So you can grab those, you can host your files on external services, or external source storage blocks, if you will. And then you can just use the by URL option when creating a new video. And so I can just grab this video from YouTube by URL, and I can just import it into VooPlayer, and then I can just continue working on it as it was hosted in VooPlayer. So hopefully that makes sense. So that's the second option which you have available, is to host files externally somewhere if you don't want to upload them to VooPlayer, and then leverage, for example, YouTube's hosting. Some of the disadvantages of that hybrid approach are that we are not able to then do some of the things which we would be able to do if that file was on our server, such as generate fancy GIFs or put extra layer of protection on top of that video to make sure that nobody can download it, and so on and so on and so on. So for professional uses, we always recommend having the file hosted on VooPlayer and served over the turbo bandwidth connection. But if you are just kind of getting started with this and are trying to figure out what the best options are, having the ability for unlimited regular bandwidth as well as for hybrid hosting, I think gives you a huge advantage over any other platform which you might be using. William is saying, hey Peter, what is your take on adding a button to Marker's thumbnail in regards to redirecting to related products? Yep, that's exactly some of the things that we are considering for Markers. As I mentioned, kind of the vision currently is for them to have a separate menu for Markers, which you would be able to add any sorts of content to. So for example, if when I was creating a marker, I had an ability for, hey, add additional descriptions or add a link or something like that, all of that content would be featured within that menu. All right. Graham is saying, thanks again. Only disadvantage I see about using VooPlayer and hosting on YouTube is a few of the VooPlayer customizations are available. Nope. There shouldn't be any limits on the customization for what you can do with VooPlayer videos that are hosted on YouTube. So for example, this is a YouTube video that I just created, and basically you have, I believe, 2 or 3 limitations. First one, which is inability to use subtitles for videos from YouTube. You can't use 360 videos, and I believe that's about it. And yeah, as I mentioned, only lack of the ability to generate email, thumbnail, GIFs. So those are kind of the only limitations which are carried over. As I mentioned, the ability for the video to be secured. Those are the limitations for YouTube videos. And I think there might be an article for that as well. I'll have a look here and follow up on that. I think he's saying it will be highly appreciated if you could ask the developers to disable the VooPlayer affiliate badge for white label, please. I'm asking you here because it's now being over a month that I reported the affiliate badge for white label I'm assuming for sub accounts rather than for master accounts. I remember seeing something about that, but if I remember correctly, sub accounts should not even have an option for the affiliate badge. I've seen a task for this somewhere, so I'll take a look at it after the call and check on what's going on with that. Shade is saying the email embed doesn't seem to be working. The email embed, the email preview image. So it seems not to be working. So let me check. So here's this video, email preview. Seems to be working fine for me. Let me try and create a new one real quick. So I'll go from, I don't know, second 5 to, and I'll have it last for 3 seconds. I don't know why it wouldn't be working. Oh. It actually did generate something a little bit strange. So that's interesting. Thanks for pointing that out, Shade. I'll take a look into that. It seems that the image is being cropped in a weird way. But that's something that we can address fairly quickly, I believe. So thank you for pointing that out. I'll have somebody take a look at that first thing in the morning. All right, cool. Good questions today, especially from Graham. So that's been a rather productive discussion, I believe, as it was for a lot of people to understand a little bit better how turbo bandwidth is working and behaving, and what are some of the differences between that. So thanks for joining the webinar and posting that question, Graham. Hopefully you'll like VoolPlayer and give it a go and let us know what your kind of impressions are on that. All right, so cool. I'm going to start wrapping up unless there are any additional questions, maybe a final one or two. If not, I just want to say thanks for joining this week, and also hopefully we'll see you next week. And we're going to continue keep making VoolPlayer better. Phoebe is asking, any storage for sub-accounts soon? What do you mean, any storage for sub-accounts? Sub-accounts should have, don't hold me to this, but I believe sub-accounts should have 10 gigabytes of storage allocated to their accounts. If that's not the case, storage that does not have VoolPlayer references. I see what you're saying. So storage in the actual links for VoolPlayer. Thanks for bringing that up again. Yeah, we can do is mask that somehow. So we can mask that under vPlay Media, for example, the vPlay Media domain. We can use that to mask the storage. Well, we'll definitely have a look at that, into that as well. Graham is also asking, should we be aware of using memes or GIFs, seeing as the copyright lawyers are cracking down? Should we be aware of using memes or GIFs? I'm not that into. I'm not up to date on the latest developments in the memes and GIFs world, so I'm not sure sort of if people are cracking down on that. So I'll defer that to some legal authority who might be better suited to answer that question. So I would Google that online rather than me giving you a bad answer. Doesn't that clear VoolPlayer references if you assign a subdomain? We're not talking about subdomains, Dave. We're talking about a completely custom domain. So you can, well, I'm on a pro license right now, but enterprise licenses have an ability to provide a completely custom domain. So for example, dave.com, which would replace everything in VoolPlayer. Unfortunately, one of the places which is not being replaced is the actual source to the video file. So on the actual source within the code, within the video file. So that's something that we are left to white label. And as I mentioned, we'll get to that fairly soon. So, all right, cool. So, all right, we're a bit over time. So I just want to thank you, everybody, again for joining, and hopefully we'll see you next week. And thank you for asking great questions today. And also, I'll look into the issues with the email preview as well as the white labeling issues which Stevie brought up. So, all right, thank you, everybody. Hopefully you have a great rest of the day and great next week. And until next week, bye.